I ran into an old colleague at a coffee shop the other day. He's a senior developer at a big tech firm, incredibly smart, and he just looked absolutely exhausted.
I think I know that level.
Oh, you definitely do. He told me he was grinding for financial independence, retire early.
Right.
And he had the spreadsheets, the 60% savings rate, the whole 9 yards. He had this really intense look in his eyes. He said, just 4 more years, man. 4 more years and I'm out.
4 years. That's the light at the end of the tunnel for him.
Exactly. He said, I'm going to sell my house, move to Thailand, and just stop. And I asked him, stop what? What will you do all day?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And he just stared at me completely blankly for a second. And he said, I don't know, not this. And he sort of motioned around. But I knew he didn't mean the coffee shop. He meant the stress, the meetings, the 9 to 5.
The whole system.
The whole thing. He said, I'll just sit on a beach forever. But there was something about the way he said forever that it didn't sound like freedom.
It sounds empty.
It sounded so empty. He'd spent 8 years building this incredibly detailed map for his escape, but he had never once thought about what to do actually cross the border. And that conversation, it crystallized this tension I've been seeing for a while, the deep philosophical split right down the middle of the FIRE movement. And it's all hidden inside the name itself.
It's the tension between the I and the R, isn't it?
Yeah.
Financial independence versus retire early.
That's it.
Your colleague, he'd aggressively solved the financial equation, which is, hard enough, but he completely ignored the critical human equation.
Yes.
And we see this psychological dilemma all the time, this powerful desire for freedom, for the autonomy to just walk away from bad work. It clashes directly with this deeply ingrained human need for purpose,
right,
for routine, for contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely. He had the escape velocity, right? The financial means to leave, but he lacked a destination beyond no more stress. His identity was purely defined by what he was fleeing.
And not what he was running to.
Exactly.
And that, for so many high achievers who, they get the math, but they fail the mental health test, that is precisely why this path we're deep diving into today even exists. It's a strategy that seeks to resolve that very conflict. It finds a viable, a sustainable, and frankly, a happier middle ground.
Okay, so what are we talking about?
We are talking about Barista FIRE. It's a path that blends that aggressive financial independence with continued, meaningful, low-stress work. It's really the sophisticated compromise that many high earners eventually realize they actually need, even if they started out chasing that full retirement dream.
So our mission today is to figure out if this blend, this compromise, is truly a viable, sustainable option for you. We're going to look beyond the superficial definitions. We'll be analyzing 3 core components.
Okay.
First, the specific psychological trade-offs you have to make and the behavioral hurdles you have to overcome. Second, the specialized and I think surprisingly intricate financial planning this model demands.
It's not simple math.
Not at all. And third, the profound and I think surprising implications this trend has for the future of professional work, especially for companies that are, trying to hang on to their top talent.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Barista FIRE. We've established it's a middle ground, but what is the fundamental difference in the actual mechanics compared to that traditional full-stop version my developer friend was chasing?
The fundamental difference is the reliance on an integrated income stream rather than a singular passive one.
Okay.
So to define it clearly, Barista FIRE is a unique approach that really speeds up the timeline to financial freedom. It does that by combining aggressive savings and investing with and this is key, the permanent necessity of part-time work to cover your remaining expenses. It acts as a major shortcut to security.
A permanent necessity. So the mechanism is what sets it apart. It's a deliberate plan to keep working, not just, a failure to achieve full retirement.
Precisely. The Barista FIRE mechanism is really a 2-phase plan. Phase 1 is what you'd expect. Saving and investing at a very high rate, we're often talking 50% or more of your income, to build a substantial nest egg.
Okay, a big pile of money.
A big pile of money. And this nest egg has to generate passive income that covers a significant percentage. Let's say 60 to 80% of your projected annual living expenses.
And phase 2?
Phase 2 is the permanent transition to part-time, low-stress work. That steady, active income stream is specifically intended to supplement the passive income. It bridges the remaining gap, and it covers those critical non-discretionary expenses.
Right. And we have to address the name Barista FIRE because I think it confuses people. It makes them think this is only for people who are, going to be making minimum wage. Where does that literal image even come from?
It's a great question because the term is purely symbolic now, though its origins are very practical and tied to employer benefits.
Ah,
It stems from the idea of taking a job that, while maybe low wage, is flexible and, crucially, is often at a large retail or service chain. The core attraction isn't the salary. It's the potential to hit a certain threshold, sometimes just 20 hours a week, to gain access to employer-sponsored benefits.
health insurance.
Most critically, health insurance. In systems where individual health insurance is prohibitively expensive, like in the US, offloading that huge cost to a part-time employer can make the entire financial plan viable. That's why the name stuck. It's really about benefits access, not about making coffee.
So if traditional FIRE demands enough passive income to cover 100% of your costs, allowing for a complete indefinite exit from the workforce, Barista FIRE accepts a financial gap. It says, okay, I'll cover 75% with my investments, and I'll happily work 15 to 20 hours a week doing something low stress to cover the other 25% and get my health insurance.
That is the perfect operational summary. Traditional FIRE aims for the complete cessation of work. Barista FIRE, by contrast, it embraces a steady, chosen income stream from enjoyable, low-stress, part-time work as a permanent feature of so-called retirement.
To really understand the power of this compromise, I think we need to place it on the entire spectrum of financial independence. For listeners who might be newer to all the different variants, how does Barista FIRE relate to the other big players, like Fat FIRE, Lean FIRE, and Coast FIRE?
Yeah, it's essential to map this landscape because people often confuse these strategies. The FIRE movement has moved so far beyond just a single goal. We can really map the major variants based on the size of the portfolio you need and the lifestyle that results from it.
Let's start with the extremes then, just to set the boundaries for the whole community.
Okay, let's start with Fat FIRE. This is the one that requires a much larger nest egg. We're often talking $5 million to $10 million. Yeah, it's enough to support an undeniably comfortable, maybe even luxurious lifestyle without ever needing to worry about budgeting. These are people who are not sacrificing their current spending habits, and they usually target annual spending well into the six figures.
And the polar opposite end of that saving spectrum.
That would be Lean FIRE. This involves achieving financial independence with the smallest possible portfolio size, often $1 million or even less. And you do that by committing to an extremely austere, minimalist lifestyle, both before and after you officially retire.
So it's all about fierce frugality.
Absolutely. The focus is on living on a very tight budget, maybe $30,000 or $40,000 a year, which dramatically minimizes the amount of capital you need to save up.
Okay, so Barista FIRE has to sit somewhere between lean and fat, right?
Yes, it does.
Right.
Barista FIRE usually requires late capital than Fat FIRE, often falling closer to the lean side in terms of the portfolio size you need. But the lifestyle it supports is generally more comfortable than Lean FIRE.
Why is that?
Because that ongoing part-time income provides an extra buffer. It gives you room for discretionary spending, for emergencies, for travel. Things a Lean FIRE budget just can't accommodate.
But the one that I think causes the most confusion is Coast FIRE. What is the crucial distinction there? Because people mix them up all the time.
They do. Coast FIRE is fundamentally different because it's a goalpost focused on future growth, not immediate withdrawal.
Okay, what does that mean?
You reach Coast FIRE when your investments are large enough. Let's say you have $300,000 at age 35, that they can grow passively to your full traditional FIRE goal, say $1.5 million, by age 60 or 65 without you contributing another dollar.
Ah, so the compounding does all the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. The freedom it grants you is the ability to switch to a lower paying, more fulfilling job for the decades in between. You only need to cover your current living expenses. You don't need to save for the future anymore.
So the key is the destination of the funding. Coast FIRE means your future is funded, which allows you to stop saving aggressively now. Barista FIRE means your present is co-funded by your passive income and a permanent chosen work stream.
That is the essential and often missed nuance. Barista FIRE integrates work into the long-term equation. Coast FIRE removes the saving requirement, but you still need to work enough to cover 100% of your current costs until you hit traditional retirement age.
Okay, now let's focus on the financial magic that blending these income sources provides. What are the core trade-offs and benefits of Barista FIRE that make this strategy so powerfully appealing?
The benefits are really rooted in risk reduction. The number one benefit is the reduced portfolio strain.
What does that mean in practice?
Your part-time income permanently lowers the required withdrawal rate from your portfolio. It acts as an active, living financial buffer. It's a layer of resilience that traditional FIRE strategies entirely lack.
So you're not just drawing less from the portfolio, you're actually changing the fundamental risk profile of the entire investment base.
Exactly. This allows the portfolio to grow more over time, which significantly mitigates the financial boogeyman of early retirement. Sequence of returns risk.
Let's spend a moment on sequence of returns risk, or SORL, because it's a concept that people who follow this stuff know about, but I think it's often poorly explained. Why is it so dangerous for early retirees?
It's the monster under the bed for them. Sequence of returns risk refers to the danger that you get poor market performance, a major downturn happening early in your retirement, just when your portfolio is at its largest and most vulnerable.
Right when you start drawing down.
Exactly. If you're forced to sell shares when they're depressed just to cover your living expenses, you permanently reduce the portfolio's ability to recover when the market eventually turns around. You're selling more shares for fewer dollars.
It's a hole you can't dig out of.
It can be. But because Barista FIRE provides that supplemental income, you have the flexibility to avoid selling when the market is down. You can live off your part-time income, allowing your portfolio to weather the storm and compound uninterrupted once the downturn ends. That income acts as an escape valve during those volatile years.
So it's essentially financial ballast during choppy seas. If the market drops 20% in your first 2 years, the part-time income covers your expenses while your investments stay untouched, preserving the number of shares you hold.
Precisely. It actually allows you to use a slightly higher, or at least a more efficient, safe withdrawal rate than a similar traditional FIRE retiree might use, because your success probability in those Monte Carlo simulations just skyrockets when a substantial portion of your annual spend is sourced externally.
Beyond the math, though, there's the psychological ease of the transition.
That is the second major benefit: flexibility and gradual transition. Moving from a high-stress, high-income corporate job to, full immediate retirement is a psychological shock for a lot of people.
A huge shock.
Barista FIRE offers a smoother, more palatable on-ramp to freedom. You go from 60 hours a week to 15 or 20. You get to keep some professional engagement while you gradually adjust to a life of autonomy. It's just less jarring, and it reduces the risk of that identity crisis we talked about with your friend.
And the third benefit ties back to why so many people choose this path in the first place: the time advantage.
The third benefit is simply the less capital required. Because you're building that permanent income component into the plan, you dramatically reduce the overall amount of money you need for financial independence. If you need a $2.5 million portfolio for full retirement, but Barista FIRE drops that requirement to, say, $1 million, you just cut years, maybe even a decade, off your accumulation phase.
Which allows for a significantly earlier exit from that high-stress career.
It is the ultimate time leverage strategy. You're buying back your most valuable asset for your time.
Okay. It's time to move from the spreadsheets to the state of mind, because the success of Barista FIRE seems to hinge entirely on whether you can solve that psychological dilemma that plagued my developer friend. I want to anchor this section with a perfect case study of what happens when you solve the money problem, but not the purpose problem.
Let's hear it, because I think we'd agree the money is often the easy part compared to managing your own sense of identity.
Right. So this involves a guy named Kenji, a brilliant software engineer working in the hyper-competitive Tokyo tech scene. He was relentless, saving nearly 70% of his income, and he hit his full FIRE number by age 40.
Wow, 40. That's impressive.
Insanely impressive. He quit his job, bought a small apartment in a quiet suburb, and planned to spend his days reading, traveling, pursuing hobbies.
The dream, right?
The dream. For the first month, he said he experienced pure euphoria. But he later recounted that by the third month, he wasn't just bored, he was truly miserable and adrift.
I've heard this story before.
His entire identity had been tied up in being a high-value contributor, a problem solver, and the person who was aggressively pursuing financial freedom. When he won the game, the scoreboard just went blank. He described the silence of his apartment as absolutely deafening, and he eventually started to feel completely useless.
The loneliness must have been profound.
It was. Eventually, he took a low-paid part-time role at a local makerspace, teaching basic coding to children and helping them build little robots. The pay was negligible, but he said the feeling of solving a simple problem or mentoring a student was the first time he'd felt useful in a year. The work gave him a routine and a context for interaction.
Kenji's experience is just a profound illustration of how behavioral economics clashes with that simplistic dream of pure leisure. We are not psychologically wired for total indefinite leisure, especially after years of high-octane professional achievement.
So the goal of just stopping is an empty one.
It's an inherently empty one, because for so many of us, our identity, our self-worth, our mental equilibrium, it's all tied to productivity, achievement, and contributing to a social structure. You remove that structure entirely, and you precipitate an identity crisis.
So Barista FIRE is not just a financial buffer, it's also a critical psychological safety net that basically mandates continued contribution.
Absolutely. The strategy provides a formalized framework for what you could call recreational employment.
Recreational employment, I like that.
It might sound like a contradiction: work is recreation, but it's not. It represents the freedom to choose work based on pleasure and fulfillment, completely stripped of the pressure to pay the mortgage. It is the sophisticated realization that you need to escape bad work, not work entirely. You are using your financial independence as the capital required to define work completely on your own terms.
What are the tangible benefits of incorporating this low-stress work into this new phase of life, particularly for, your mental well-being?
The benefits are substantial. First, part-time work provides essential and consistent social interaction. Isolation is a silent killer in full retirement, and a part-time job, even a seemingly simple one, it forces regular low-stakes interaction with colleagues and the public.
Right. You have to leave the house.
You have to leave the house. Second, it maintains a routine and structure, which is vital for mood regulation, for fighting anxiety, and for preventing that aimlessness that plagues so many fully retired individuals.
What's the third?
Third, it allows for the continuous maintenance of professional or personal skills. That provides a continuous sense of competence and contribution that is so critical to our self-esteem.
The power of this is really the shift in agency, isn't it? The mental narrative changes completely from, I have to do this job to survive and pay bills, to the much healthier, I choose to do this work because it brings me joy, connection, and a sense of contributing.
Exactly. The shift is about creating intentional, high-quality free time for genuine fulfillment. The time you buy back can be dedicated to personal growth, to deep hobbies, to learning new skills, or exploring entrepreneurial ventures without that existential fear of needing them to immediately provide an income. This is the difference between having a hobby and having a life defined by your own chosen purpose.
But let's introduce some necessary skepticism here. Even with financial independence achieved, part-time work is still work. It's possible to still experience burnout or anxiety. What are the common psychological pitfalls of the Barista FIRE lifestyle?
Oh, you have to anticipate that transition pitfalls exist. One major pitfall is the risk of part-time burnout.
Part-time burnout. It sounds strange, but I can see it.
It happens. If you choose a part-time job purely for the benefits, and that job is intensely customer-facing, involves high physical labor, or it's just poorly managed, it can quickly become the very grind you are trying to escape. You might be financially independent, but you still hate your 3 shifts a week.
That sounds like a failure of execution then.
Yeah.
In the job selection.
Yeah.
The person chose the job for the financial perk rather than the psychological fit.
It is. And on top of that, the jobs themselves might lack inherent stability or job security. You might invest time and emotion into a role only for the company to reorganize or eliminate part-time benefits, which reintroduces the very financial anxiety you worked so hard to eliminate. You have to remain somewhat emotionally detached from the work itself.
And the other major psychological hurdle. This has to tie back to the financial discipline required to sustain the model.
Right.
Which has to be maintained indefinitely.
That is the perpetual, ongoing need for discipline against lifestyle creep. The temptation is constant. Because you have the supplemental income coming in, it is incredibly easy for your spending to just inch up.
Right, a little extra here, a little there.
Exactly. A Barista FIRE plan is based on the assumption that the part-time income covers discretionary spending or acts as a buffer. If you start spending all of your passive income plus all of your part-time income, and then some, you immediately begin to negate the security benefits of the entire model.
So if your Barista FIRE target was calculated on a $40,000 annual withdrawal, but you start spending $50,000 from the portfolio because the part-time income makes you feel rich, you accelerate your depletion rate and reintroduce massive longevity risk.
Precisely. Maintaining that boundary between earned income and required spending is the crucial long-term behavioral challenge. The lifestyle has to remain minimalist enough to ensure the portfolio never faces undue pressure, regardless of how much fun the part-time work is.
Okay, we have to move from the behavioral to the technical side of this, because Barista FIRE math is anything but standard. It's an exercise in managing integrated income sources, minimizing your tax burden, and, critically, planning around points of failure, points of fragility. This takes us back to that crucial anecdote about Sarah and Mike.
The fragility of the plan often rests on external factors that are entirely outside of the stock market.
Exactly. Sarah and Mike, this couple who saved so diligently for their Barista FIRE plan. The financial engine was running smoothly, great savings rate, optimized portfolio, but the single linchpin of their entire decade-long plan was that Mike was going to work part-time at a local university solely for the subsidized health insurance benefits.
The classic strategy.
The classic strategy. 2 months before he was supposed to leave his corporate job, the university's HR department announces a sweeping policy change. They reclassified part-time roles and cut those very benefits.
Oh, no.
Their entire 10-year timeline, their sense of security, was instantly jeopardized. It wasn't a market crash that scared them. It was an HR memo. They spent the next 2 months in just utter panic, frantically recalculating their BFIRE number to account for the true, unsubsidized cost of individual insurance plans.
That story just underscores that in many economic environments, managing healthcare costs is the single most fragile variable in the entire Barista FIRE equation. Their stability was tied to HR policy, not market diversification.
So before we delve deeper into healthcare, let's nail down the specialized financial foundation you need for this strategy.
Okay.
Let's start with a calculation. How do we formalize the Barista FIRE number, or the BFIRE number as it's called?
The calculation is conceptually simple, but the inputs have to be realistic and, future-proof. The core idea, unlike traditional FIRE, is that your investment portfolio only needs to cover the unfunded gap between your annual expenses and your reliable post-tax part-time income.
Okay, so the formula is annual expenses minus reliable part-time income equals the investment gap.
Correct. And then that gap is multiplied by the appropriate safe withdrawal rate, multiple, usually 25, based on the traditional 4% rule, though we should critique that multiplier in a moment to determine the final target portfolio size.
Okay, let's use that illustrative example you mentioned to bring the math to life for people.
Certainly. So if an individual has realistic projected annual expenses of $60,000 and they conservatively expect to reliably generate $25,000 from part-time work after all taxes are accounted for.
Right, post-tax.
The investment gap is $35,000. Multiplying that gap by 25 gives you a Barista FIRE number of $875,000. That is the target portfolio size you need to achieve independence.
A portfolio target of $875,000 is so much more attainable and faster to reach than the $1.5 million or more required for a traditional FIRE retiree living on the same $60,000 budget. This is why you called it the ultimate shortcut.
It is the speed advantage, but as we touched on, this calculation forces us to immediately critique the 4% rule, which is the foundation of that 25 times multiplier.
Why is that?
For a Barista FIRE retiree who's often aiming to retire in their early 40s or 50s, the standard 4% withdrawal rate might be too aggressive for the required time horizon.
So why is a 4% rule considered risky when your retirement lasts longer than 30 years?
The historical success rate of the 4% rule is based on a 30-year retirement period. If you're retiring at age 45, your time horizon could easily be 55 years. Longer time horizons just severely exacerbate both longevity risk, the risk of outliving your money, and that sequence of returns risk we detailed earlier.
So, to mitigate the risk of spending down assets too fast over a 50-plus year time frame, what conservative withdrawal rate do early retirees typically target?
Well, many sophisticated early retirees choose to plan on a more conservative withdrawal rate. They often settle somewhere between 3.5% and 3.75%. If they choose 3.5%, the multiplier moves from 25 times to about 28.6 times.
So that increases your savings target.
It does. While the Barista FIRE income stream inherently helps, planning conservatively by using, say, a 3.75% safe withdrawal rate for your investment gap still demands a higher savings target than the 4% rule would suggest, but it ensures long-term sustainability.
Okay, let's return to Sarah and Mike. Managing healthcare costs. This is the financial weak point. If you lose those employer benefits, How do you manage that massive, unpredictable cost variable in early retirement?
This is the planning stage that requires the most technical diligence. If you lose employer benefits, you have to fully factor the true gross cost of health insurance into your BFIRE number calculation. We have a few key strategies for coverage before you become Medicare eligible at 65.
Okay, what's the first step right after you leave your job?
First, there is COBRA. This lets you stay on your former employer's group plan, typically for 18 to 76 months. However, and this is a big however, you have to be prepared to pay the full premium plus administrative fees, which can run thousands of dollars a month.
So it's a short-term, very expensive bridge.
Exactly. For the long term, we often talk about the health insurance exchanges.
Right, the ACA marketplace.
Yes, the ACA marketplace. The premiums here can be substantially lowered through government subsidies, but this is where your financial strategy has to become hyper-specific. To qualify for those subsidies, you have to keep your taxable income low.
Ah, okay. How do you do that when you're living off investments?
It means strategically utilizing investments that produce little or no taxable income. So, drawing from cash reserves, from Roth assets, and from long-term capital gains from your taxable investment accounts.
So if you minimize your modified adjusted gross income, your MAGI, you maximize the subsidy. This requires very careful withdrawal planning.
Absolutely. The goal is to generate just enough taxable income, maybe through small Roth conversions or capital gains harvesting, to qualify for the subsidy without generating too much, which would phase the subsidy out entirely. This is a yearly exercise in tax-optimized withdrawal strategy. It's a key difference from standard retirement planning.
And finally, the savings vehicle that is so lauded in the FIRE community, the health savings account.
The health savings account, or HSA, is non-negotiable for early retirement planning. It provides the triple tax benefit. Contributions are tax deductible, the assets grow tax deferred, and crucially for a retiree, distributions for qualified medical expenses are tax-free at any age. It acts as a powerful, dedicated retirement health savings vehicle.
But the truly specialized math here concerns accessing your retirement funds penalty-free before the standard withdrawal age of 51 and a half. Since Barista FIRE retirees are often leaving work much earlier, how do they bridge that gap?
This is a huge hurdle. Since early retirees need income, relying solely on traditional tax-deferred accounts like 401ks and traditional IRAs presents a major problem, that 10% penalty on early withdrawals. Therefore, the investment strategy has to create a penalty-free bridge.
And how do you build that bridge?
This is why taxable investment accounts are key.
Because they lack the upfront deduction, but the money is always accessible.
Exactly. That money is yours to grow and then spend at any age and for any reason without penalty. By drawing primarily from taxable accounts early on, you can create a cash bridge of, say, 5 to 10 years of expenses. This allows your traditional and Roth assets to continue compounding on a tax-advantaged basis. And when you sell assets in a taxable account after holding them for more than a year, you pay favorable long-term capital gains tax rates, which can be significantly lower than the ordinary income tax applied to 401k withdrawals.
But what about the tax-advantaged accounts themselves? How do you access the money you saved in 401ks and IRAs before 59 and a half without those penalties?
This leads us to the advanced strategy. The Roth conversion ladder. This is the mechanism that converts money from your traditional retirement accounts into a Roth IRA.
Okay, how does that work?
While the conversion is taxable income in the year it occurs after a mandatory 5-year seasoning period, the converted funds can be withdrawn tax and penalty-free at any age.
So you start converting funds 5 years before you actually need them. It's a structured plan for accessing the core of your wealth.
It is a structured and highly detailed plan. You aim to convert enough each year to generate your required living expenses 5 years down the line, while simultaneously keeping your taxable income low enough to optimize for those critical ACA health insurance subsidies. This is the sophisticated financial choreography Barista FIRE demands.
To wrap up the finance section, what does the required discipline look like for investment strategy and long-term sustainability?
Successfully achieving and then maintaining Barista FIRE requires an elevated, sustained savings rate, often 30 to 60%. But the key to sustainability is flexibility and risk mitigation. You have to accept that your spending needs to be adaptable based on market performance.
So if the market is down, you tighten your belt.
You have to. And to minimize sequence of returns risk, sophisticated planners recommend setting aside a substantial 2-year cash cushion, 2 years of living expenses in highly liquid assets or cash equivalents as you approach your BFIRE date.
That way, if the market crashes in year 1 of retirement, you can just draw down cash for 2 years, avoiding the forced sale of depressed investments.
It's the ultimate financial insurance policy against short-term volatility. It ensures your strategy can weather unexpected market downturns without sacrificing your long-term plan.
We've covered the psychological necessity of purpose and the intricate financial engineering required. Now, let's look at the external consequences. The Barista FIRE trend is not just a personal finance strategy. It's actively reshaping the professional world and forcing corporations to rethink how they manage and retain high-skilled talent.
This is where we definitively prove that the term barista has become entirely divorced from low-wage reality, because the workers who are leaving are often the most valuable ones.
I have the perfect corporate anecdote for this. It's from a manager named Priya. She runs a major tech division and told me she lost her best data analyst, a woman in her late 30s, who just walked in one day and quit to go work at a coffee shop and pursue ceramics.
I'm sure Priya was floored.
She was. She was prepared to offer a massive retention bonus, a promotion, whatever it took.
Yeah.
But the analyst just smiled and walked away.
Priya was viewing the situation through the lens of traditional compensation. The analyst was viewing it through the lens of independence.
Exactly. And what actually happened was that the analyst retired for about 6 months, got bored, and then re-entered the market as a highly paid, specialized 15-hour-a-week consultant.
Ah, there it is.
She now consults for 3 different companies, including Priya's, billing an hourly rate that effectively triples her old salary while only working 40% of the hours. Priya's realization was profound. She said, "We're losing our best people not to competitors, but to the pursuit of a better life, and now we have to pay them more to work fewer hours."
This trend is a direct assault on traditional talent management models. The old corporate contract assumed that companies own their top talent's time 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., plus after-hours availability in exchange for a salary and benefits. Barista FIRE breaks that contract by giving the employee the financial leverage to buy back their time and dictate their terms entirely.
So this movement is creating a flexible, high-skilled gig economy driven entirely by choice, not by necessity, which is the traditional driver of contract work.
Exactly. We need to redefine the part-time job. For high-skilled professionals, the barista job does not have to be low-wage service work. The part-time component is simply whatever aligns with their existing skills, their intellectual interests, and their desired work-life balance.
So what does this high-value consultant model look like in practice for professionals in fields like, say, finance, specialized engineering, or data science?
Professionals with advanced degrees or highly niche expertise, the people who are really difficult to replace, can seamlessly transition to consulting. Companies often have temporary, highly specialized needs that just don't warrant a full-time, high-salary employee. These individuals step in, they solve the specific problem, and then they step out.
And they can charge a premium for that.
They can bill at an extremely high hourly rate, often triple their previous equivalent, because the company recognizes the value of niche, on-demand expertise.
Can you give a more tangible example of that niche expertise being leveraged?
Sure. Consider a former high-level financial regulator who now consults part-time on specialized compliance issues for 3 different medium-sized banks. He only works during school hours and bills at rates far higher than his old salary equivalent.
Okay.
Or another example is a structural engineer who specializes in the high-stakes analysis of government construction projects. He consults on a project basis, taking 6 months off between contracts. These roles scratch the intellectual itch, provide high supplemental income, and demand minimal time commitment.
This raises a critical question and a bit of a paradox for high earners. If someone was making, say, $300,000 a year, why would it ever be rational to voluntarily plunge to a job making $25,000 as a literal barista?
For most high earners, it is not the rational move, unless the purpose is purely psychological, a total escape from their previous industry. The more financially rational path for a high earner pursuing Barista FIRE is to find a role that offers a significant reduction in workload while still maintaining a high percentage of their previous hourly pay.
So the goal isn't to work for minimum wage. The goal is to maximize the time/money trade-off.
Precisely. The successful high earner Barista FIRE strategy targets getting, for instance, 40% of their previous pay for only 20% of the workload and stress. That trade-off, high income density combined with a drastically reduced mental load, is usually far superior to accepting a minimum wage job, which would require many more hours to generate the same supplemental income.
But let's acknowledge the dream. A lot of people fantasize about those lifestyle-oriented jobs. Working at a bookstore, helping on a vineyard, working at a museum. What's the appeal there, beyond the paycheck?
The appeal is almost entirely in the non-monetary benefits. These jobs are often selected for lifestyle perks: free access to the local golf course if you work in the clubhouse, massive discounts at a specialized bookstore, social engagement at a local community center, or physical activity that replaces the gym. It's about fulfilling non-financial quality of life needs either for free or at a reduced cost.
That sounds idyllic, but we do need the reality check on those so-called fun jobs, because the reality of working service or lifestyle roles is often a quick path back to burnout.
The reality check is severe. Many of the fantasy jobs are still intensely stressful or physically demanding. Take ski patrol. People romanticize gliding down the slopes, but the reality involves intense physical labor, high injury risk, stressful emergency response, and being exposed to brutal weather conditions.
Right.
Likewise, working at a vineyard during harvest is not romantic sipping and tasting. It is intense, deadline-driven physical labor requiring long hours outdoors.
Or even the seemingly pleasant retail jobs. Working at that beloved local bookstore quickly devolves into inventory management, dealing with rude customers and being on your feet for 8 hours straight.
It becomes a grind. Even being a surf instructor, which sounds like perpetual bliss, requires vast amounts of time managing safety, wading in cold water, dealing with frustrated beginners, and spending minimal time actually surfing.
So what's the takeaway?
The key takeaway is that whether you pursue the high-paid consultant track or the lifestyle job, the goal of a Barista firework component has to be the same. Maximizing the fun and minimizing the psychological and physical burden. It needs to be work that you would choose to do even if you didn't need the money.
So this whole deep dive has really established that Barista FIRE is not a fallback plan. It is a meticulously engineered, intentional middle ground.
Absolutely.
It recognizes the financial relief of avoiding that massive nest egg, while also solving the profound psychological emptiness that's often faced by those who achieve full, abrupt retirement. It provides that critical need for a non-financial purpose component, satisfying our deep need for contribution, routine, and social connection.
However, this approach, as we've seen, it demands incredibly complex, specialized financial planning. It requires superior tax management to navigate that pre-59.5 access via Roth conversion ladders and taxable accounts, and absolute diligence in mitigating that single point of failure introduced by healthcare costs and the fragility of external employer benefits.
And the Barista FIRE movement is forcing a massive reckoning within the corporate world. It's fundamentally changing the terms of engagement with high-demand talent. It's a phenomenon where the best and brightest are prioritizing autonomy over traditional compensation, creating a new flexible economy driven by choice.
And this ties back to the profound shifting landscape of professional power. The greatest long-term effect of the Barista FIRE movement isn't just about retiring a few years early. It's revealing that for the well-prepared individual, financial independence is simply the capital required to define the future of work entirely on your own terms, transforming high-demand corporate pressure into highly specialized, flexible choice, thereby maximizing not just wealth, but well-being.